Hello, and welcome to our first webinar of our HR and Professional Committee. I have the honor to be the chair, along with Robert Ortiz. You're in for an interesting program as we talk about building an agile and innovative workforce for the future. I also want to thank our presenting sponsor, CareerSource, South Florida, and our professional sponsor, Barry University. I want to take a moment now to introduce Diana Valdivia, who is the Business Service Manager at CareerSource South Florida and a member of our committee, to say a few words. Diana, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Aaron, for that introduction. Thank you, Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. My name is Diana Valdivia with CareerSource South Florida. I'm the Business Services Manager. We are your Miami-Dade County Local Workforce Development Board. And basically, what we do is we help your business with enhancing your talent pipeline, reaching your goals, your business goals, success, together with financial and training incentives that are both locally and state funded. For any more questions, or if you're interested in learning as to how you can gain more success for your business, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Aaron, the Greater Miami Chamber, and all my fellow colleagues here on the call. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. Thank you for all that CareerSource is doing. For those of you who don't know, CareerSource is a statewide organization. Diana happens to work down here in South Florida, but they have deployed people to affected areas from Hurricane Helene and Milton in helping businesses get back on their feet. So I want to thank them specially for all the work they're doing. I now have the pleasure of introducing my co-chair, Robert Ortiz, who will be running this webinar for you. Robert is the Senior Vice President of People and Culture for the Americas region of Amadeus, the leading global travel technology provider. Robert has over 25 years of experience in the HR field with various industries, including academia, international banking, pharmaceuticals, and now travel technology. Robert also sits on the advisory board for FIU's Master Program for Human Resource Management and has been an outstanding member of this committee for a number of years. And with that, I turn this program over to Robert, and I thank you all for being here.
So good afternoon. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you everyone for joining today's session. I will first want to start off by saying today's session is, in the framework of today's session, has been done in collaboration with our Education and Workforce Development Committee, and as part of that committee, the vice chair of that committee, Ken Fenner, and a good friend and colleague of mine, provided input into this session. So thank you, Ken. Hopefully you're on the line and being an active participant of today's session. In addition, part of our commitment from a committee perspective that we will continue to provide content in collaboration with other committees across the chamber. So with that, we'll get started. Today's session is really meant to be interactive. I will introduce the panelists next and share their backgrounds. In addition, we'll get into the content, but please, during this session, feel free to ask questions. To the extent that we can get to them towards the end of the session, we'll make sure that we respond accordingly. And if not, then we'll be sure to follow up as well. As mentioned earlier, this session is being recorded. The recording will definitely be available probably a few days after this event, and wanted to make sure that you're all aware of that. So with that, I will get started. Let me introduce my panelists. First panelist is Dr. Paula Hopkins. Dr. Hopkins is the Executive Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Fund Development at the Miami-Dade Beacon Council, where she leads the organization's partner engagement and major gift strategy. Her work supports the council's mission to build a sustainable, inclusive, and competitive economy for Greater Miami, driving transformative growth through strategic partnerships, institutional giving, and public sector collaborations. With over 30 years of experience in leadership, strategy, and operations, Dr. Hopkins brings deep expertise from her tenure at PepsiCo, where she led enterprise-wide initiatives that significantly advance equity and inclusion. Her visionary leadership helped drive PepsiCo's commitment to fostering equity across its workforce and business practices. And in her role at the Beagle Council, Dr. Hopkins leverages her vast experience to strengthen and extend the organization's reach, cultivating high-level partnerships that deliver impact for investors, partners, and the greater Miami community. She is also the founder of Second and Sixth, an investment and consulting firm specializing in business invigoration, executive leadership, development, and strategic initiatives. Dr. Hopkins holds a doctorate in business administration and MBA from Rollins College, Crummer Graduate School, where she also earned her bachelor's in sales and marketing. She's a Lean Six Sigma belt, green belt, and certified and a life-bound executive coach. Dr. Hopkins, thank you for being here today. Dr. Michael Manino, who's the executive director at AI Center for Miami-Dade College. He's a chief science officer for Flow Research Collective, and neuroscientist, an entrepreneur, philosopher, and athlete. Dr. Manino earned a master's of arts in philosophy from California State University, Los Angeles, and a PhD in complex systems and brain sciences from Florida Atlantic University, focusing on computational cognitive neuroscience. Recently, as the director of the Artificial Intelligence Centers at Miami-Dade County, he spearheaded AI initiatives through one of the nation's largest educational institutions, including curricula, industry partnerships, trainings, workshops, and events that educate faculty, staff, students, and the community at large on AI. At Miami-Dade College, Michael also teaches AI ethics, critical thinking, and philosophy since 2009. Michael previously held the position of Director of Programs for the Institute for Data Science and Computing, where he fostered scientific and computational initiatives across various departments, as well as championing scientific and computational collaborations. Michael also previously served as the Chief Science Officer at Flow Research Collective, driving research on optimizing human performance and well-being flow states. So again, welcome, Dr. Manino. And lastly, but not least by any means, a friend and colleague of mine, Javier Lopez. Javi is the CHRO for Alvi. He joined them in 2024, where he leads both the human resources function and the benefit card division. And with a career spanning 20 years, he has diverse experience across small, medium, and large organizations and industries such as logistics, healthcare, energy, higher education, retail, philanthropy, human capital management, payroll, and distribution. He serves as an adjunct professor, teaching both graduate and undergraduate courses at several local universities. He is SPHR certified and has contributed to the profession as a former member of the PHR SPHR exam development panel for HRCI. Javi holds an MS in Human Resources from Nova Southeastern University and a BS in Mathematical Science from Barry University. And he's married and he is a proud father of 2 teenagers. So again, thank you all so much for being here today. A very, very interesting topic we're going to discuss. Before we get into the questions, let me just provide you all with the background and some information. According to the World Economic Forum, as many as 375 million people will need to be reskilled by 2025. And according to Ernst & Young, as many as 83% of organizations are in the middle of re-engineering their career programs. And Korn Ferry predicts as much as $8.5 trillion in unrealized revenue due to this skills crisis. So that is a staggering statistic. Therefore, we need to embrace transformation through skills-based strategies. We need to rethink how we plan and predict future needs through a dynamic understanding of skills mapped to talent in the context of work. And the big topic that we all talk about in our daily lives, AI. AI will have a profound impact on how workers perform. Efficiencies and acceleration in productivity will likely trigger strategies such as hiring freezes and possibly temporary attrition. But AI will also increase profits, decrease prices, and eventually increase demand for, amongst other things, new talent. So for the panelists here today, the first question is, does your company operate in an industry that is at risk of transformation, that has a large share of employees in at-risk occupations? And if so, what types of disruptions do you expect as AI scales up? And I first want to start with Dr. Hopkins. The reason why is, for those of you that do not follow Dr. Hopkins on LinkedIn, please do so. And I mentioned that, I told I was going to mention this. She's probably one of the most active executives I have seen on LinkedIn, but more importantly, she has the finger of the pulse of what's going on in the local community, particularly in Miami-Dade County. So Dr. Hopkins, I want to start with you. What is the impact? I mean, how should small or large employees be managing this disruption? And maybe you can provide your view and what you're seeing within the community.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank not only you, Robert, and my fellow panelists, and then, of course, the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce and your president for allowing me to participate in today alongside some great minds. I'll be taking a lot of great notes because I'm always forever learning. As we talked about, and most people know that our mission at the Miami-Dade Beacon Council is actually to drive a more sustainable. And when you think about technology, how do we make sure we do that in our environment? Inclusive, right? Everyone in Greater Miami has the ability to achieve economic development and then remain competitive. I'm always reminded when I think about education that Jill Biden actually said it best, the country that out-educates, out-competes the world. So that's how I think about AI right now. I also like to say that when people say that, hey, we're on the horizon, it is happening now in our daily lives, quite honestly. You don't get to 83% and $8.5 trillion and it doesn't affect Greater Miami because we're big enough to have a big piece of that. But to answer your question directly, when I think about small and large employers that we deal with daily that are thinking of moving to Miami or expanding or growing their business here, they're all on the front lines of transformation. And when I think about AI adoption scales in things like retail, that's a big piece of our business, hospitality, which is over 50% of our business, and then logistics, which is becoming a bigger piece of our business just because we own the largest airport. We have the biggest port, not only for commercial passengers going out, but also for cargo with our Port of Miami. And according to Miami-Dade Beacon Council research, the number we actually put out there is that 92% of our businesses here in the market are of small enterprise. And that keeps me up at night because when I think about that piece of our business, 87,000 small businesses, the disruptions that can happen, Robert, around, if they don't get on, if we don't have them on the bandwagon of automation and AI, how do we increase customer service? How do we get the supply chain right? We can actually falter in our community. So when we think about things we're doing here at the Beacon Council, we think about how do we partner with our institutions that are growing training around AI. And we're sitting in the middle of one, Miami-Dade College. You can actually get not only certification, AA, and as Dr. Acosta tells me, you can get a BA from Miami-Dade College around AI. So we expect this transition to create new opportunities. We were very positive about it because the reskilling opportunity, we own that as a community, but we also own the part that it'll be new opportunities for higher skilled workers, more wages, and then those challenges that we need to get our lower skilled positions up, they remain relevant, and we want to do our part here to make sure that organizations that are coming to Miami actually invest in the community to get everybody involved in growing the economy.
Terrific, thank you. Javi, I'm going to go to you next. I mean, obviously, given your background, knowing what your tenure's been across the gambit of sort of small, medium, and large companies, your thoughts on that question about disruption and what the
Absolutely.
impacts are.
And I think, and by the way, thank you, Robert, and the rest of the team. I'm delighted to be here with you guys. It's a pleasure. It's a real pleasure. So with respect to the question, first, I do operate in an industry and in a company that's going to be impacted. I think we all do. And if you think you don't, you're kidding yourself. I operate in the medical insurance brokerage space for government-sponsored programs, which means Medicaid, Medicare Advantage. So we're servicing Medicaid, Medicare patients. We're a broker, and we're primarily doing this through contact center staff. The majority of the population in my company are customer service reps. So can AI impact us? Yes, in a very big way. So is it going to be transformational? It will be, with some caveats. It's difficult sometimes when one of the services we provide is transportation, let's say, of Medicare Advantage patients that need special assistance. And we're taking calls from those members, or those members parent or kids or whoever, we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, it's being done right because people's lives are at risk. So the caveat, the big caveat for me is, yes, it's going to be transformational. Yes, it's going to impact us in a big way, but we're operating in a space where we can impact, if it doesn't work the way it should, even if it's a low percentage of the times, we can have a real big impact to people's lives. And we want to make sure we're using it in a safe and controlled way. So that's the caveat. The caveat, it's got to be in a safe and controlled way. I don't think we're at a place where we trust the technology enough yet. I think we trust it for many different aspects, but not 100%. And I think the impact, which we're going to cover a little later on, that I feel is going to happen across the board is, especially in the HR profession, where people are always saying, am I going to be replaced by AI? And my response is, no, you're going to be replaced by another human being that knows how to leverage AI in an effective and efficient way.
Right.
So as I start thinking about this transformation, I think it's the fact that I need to teach people how to leverage AI in a productive way is going to be front and center. And my favorite thing is, well, let's use AI to help us learn how to use AI. So that's kind of a nice one. Just-in-time development. Just-in-time development. How about that? I'm going to train you when you need to be trained, and you're going to train yourself by leveraging AI.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So a couple of things. I know Dr. Menino wants to jump in, and as an educator of AI and emotional learning, I'm sure he has plenty of things to say on this. But question to you, particularly knowing, Javi, where you just came from, and you were in the distribution sort of sector prior to this as well. And since you were there for, I want to just ask you quickly about that. Did you see the same impact, or would there be disruption in different industries? I just wanted, just for the benefit of the participants today, to sort of talk about, your prior role, which I thought was quite intriguing as well.
Absolutely, 100%. So I was in a protein distributor, $3.9 billion in revenue. So millions and millions and millions of cases of proteins, beef, poultry, seafood being distributed across the US and overseas. Purchasing all that protein, there's a bunch of different use cases. We started implementing an AI solution in the organization. But one of the ones that I thought was super interesting, which we were exploring, they are continuing to explore, was beef prices. Beef, for instance, as an example, is a commodity. And the factors that impact the price of your steak when you go to the supermarket to buy it are very interesting. For example, the amount of rain that happened X number of months ago, it could be 18 months, 24 months, whatever it is, impacts how much pasture there is, which impacts the size of the cattle, which impacts the productivity, the amount of product that you end up as a country, which impacts the price to process. And it's just a very big chain of dependencies and impacts. And so one of the things that we were looking at was, how can we use AI to look at all these factors that impact the price of the product we're selling and distributing, so that we can get ahead of it in some cases, hopefully 6 to 12 months ahead of it, and we could put strategies to mitigate potential negative impacts to the business. So if we know that beef is going to go up $3 per pound 12 months from now, what can we do with respect to pork? Because people trade beef for pork whenever beef is too expensive. So we were already looking at that, which was super, super interesting. But it comes down to how much trust, the level of trust that we have in the models. And man, if you get one thing wrong, it could be a $50 million mistake. So you have to make sure that as you're building it and you're leveraging it and you're going to launch it, that you have a control mechanism to audit and make sure that things are going the way they're supposed to be going. You don't want the robots to take over your beef production.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Manino, thoughts?
Great.
Because you're an
Great.
entrepreneur, so I'd be interested to get your view on
Well, but let me speak as an
disruption.
yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
let me speak as an educator first, but also I want
Sure.
to just start off by thanking you and thanking everybody for being here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation already. In fact, I wanted to start somewhere, but then your thoughts, Javier's thoughts and Dr. Hopkins' thoughts made me want to start somewhere else. And so one thing I will say is that AI, and this largely comes from a person that I'm a fan of, historian Yuval Harari. Maybe a lot of you have heard about him, but he talks about AI not as a tool, but an agent. And that's something that I think we really need to consider going on, especially in all of our industries, right? It is a tool, but what we're developing now can make itself better, right? AI can create better, and it is already helping us make better AI, and it's doing that itself. And what I mean by an agent, or what I should say he means by an agent, is this idea of AI can make decisions, right? It has its own goals eventually, and it will make its decisions on behalf of us, right? So there we are really creating something very different than just an instrument that we can use to automate things, to increase productivity, to increase performance, and so on. So that's a very, very important point because it affects a lot of different industries in many layered ways than just having AI as a tool to automate administrative tasks, for example. But the way I was thinking about your question, Robert, was sort of a bi-directional. There's how education is being significantly and undergoing a significant transformation because of AI. But then from my perspective at MDC, at Miami-Dade College, and Dr. Hopkins, you already stole some of my thunder about what Miami-Dade College is doing, which I'll flesh out a little bit. But there's that AI pedagogy, so to speak, right? There's the way we're educating now for the future coming, the era of AI, right? So that's the bi-directional. So how do we educate folks for these new jobs that are coming online? How do we reskill and upskill folks? But then also, how is education undergoing a significant transformation from AI itself? And of course it is, right? Like personalized learning, all of these things that many of the audience probably knows, personalized learning, automation of administrative tasks, and those kinds of things. But even if we take AI pedagogy itself, the time that I was director at the Artificial Intelligence Center at Miami-Dade College for a couple of years already changed the way we should be educating AI. And let me flesh that out a little bit, elaborate on that point. AI, as everybody knows, is an exponential technology, right? The rate at which it's increasing is increasing itself, right? So there's an exponential curve, and we've already witnessed this since November of 2022 with OpenAI and ChatGPT, right? But at Miami-Dade College, we've unveiled and launched these programs, really the first of its kind in the state of Florida and the nation. As Dr. Hopkins was alluding to, this associate's degree in artificial intelligence, 2 college credit certificates, and a bachelor's, which we launched last fall. And you have a lot of folks, you take natural language processing, you take computer vision, you take AI thinking, you learn about AI literacy, that AI is not just a skill set and sort of a discipline, but it's really a mindset as well. And you take AI ethics, which, as you mentioned, I teach right off the ground, right off the bat. You take AI ethics, and that's super, super important because, in my opinion, a little biased, but it's probably one of the most important questions humanity could be addressing right now is responsible AI and how to think about the ethical considerations of what we're building, especially because we're building this agent, not only a tool. So so even in that time, my point is that we've already thought about how we're reskilling and upskilling in the era of AI, but also how we're teaching AI, because already since November of 2022 and the launch and explosion of generative AI, how we should be teaching AI pedagogy has already changed in that 18 months since we launched these programs, right? For example, a lot of people talk about this necessity of coding. And if everything's done in plain language now with large language models, we have the top people of NVIDIA like Jensen Huang, Elon Musk, Sam Altman. All of these people are talking about the necessity of building applications and software engineering and coding is also starting to diminish, right? So there's a very real way that we have to teach AI for these jobs coming online that is going to be important, and we have to keep up, right? Already we're finding in education that we have to keep up with the way we're teaching it based on these AI systems that are out there.
Terrific. Thank you. Appreciate the insight. So second question to the panelists. And we sort of alluded to it a bit already, and so we sort of creeped over to the next question. But as you in your respective roles evaluate positions, people within your respective companies, and you're thinking about the roles that could be transformed, augmented, automated via IA, we sort of alluded to about how will you prepare your workforce for those changes? So how specifically, what things will you apply in order to prepare them for those changes? Javi, maybe I start with you.
Yeah, I think it's really important for everyone to get comfortable with using the AI tools in the market. Of course, ChatGPT is a popular one. Whichever one you're going to use, you have to get comfortable. And so with respect to the company that I'm with, and what I would do is we need to get everyone using it, despite the potential risks that might represent for the organization. You have to.
How do you get them to use it? If you don't mind, I'm interrupting, but
yeah,
how
of course. Let's give them all a paid subscription to ChatGPT or some other version and start having them integrate that tool in their day-to-day, kind of like a consultant, right? How many of you have access to a consultant? Not a lot of people. Not a lot of people at the bottom of the organizations. Executive coaches are usually available at the top, at the C-suite level. Imagine if you gave access to a lower level, an entry level person, to a consultant, to an executive coach. Imagine if you gave access to a supervisor, just a front line supervisor, access to an executive coach. So how would we do it? We need to get people to use it. The company has to sponsor that stuff and provide the necessary training to teach people how to use it. But at some point, it has to be a thing where I don't need to train the person. The person should be able to train themselves. So how do we teach people to use the tool to teach themselves when is needed, rather than ahead of time? I'm going to teach you how to have a difficult conversation with your direct report today, but you're not having a difficult conversation until 6 months from now. Well, here's a tool that you can leverage to use whenever you need to have difficult conversations. And so with respect to HR, you might say, well, that's HR's job. Well, you're still going to have to be able to ensure that whatever's happening is vetted in the right way, that it's productive, etc. So the person has a coach, and you're going to be guiding the person on how to leverage that coach. I don't know if that answers the question.
It sort of does. I think it does to a certain degree, I guess. And I'm going to just ask you an interesting question as well. So how do you manage then those that may resist? And I'll go to Dr. Hopkins next. But so again, adoption is not for everyone. It's not going to be embraced by everyone. So how do you manage that dynamic?
Yeah. Well, within the organization, if it was my company, it would be use it or you're gone.
Okay.
It's a mandatory. It's mandatory for you. It's kind of like what I do with my own kids. This is for your own good.
Okay. Dr.
No,
Hopkins,
I think
I'm sorry.
To get buy-in and adoption, I think it has to be, you have to make sure that you're listening to people, understanding their needs, that you're having a meaningful conversation, that you're exploring the challenges and the pushbacks and the concerns that they're having, which I think is going to be all around. It's going to take my job, Javi. If you have AI help frontline managers have difficult conversations, then what is HR going to do? And I think that that's going to be the conversation. And it's, you know, you're not going to shove it down their throats. You have to have a conversation and make sure you're getting buy-in, which is not necessarily an easy thing, depending on the pocket and the demographic of the company.
Okay, interesting. Dr. Hopkins, your thoughts on that question, please.
Yeah. So I think Javier is thinking about it the right way. At the Miami-Dade Beacon Council, we advocate for a proactive approach. So some of the stuff that Javier just shared, we actually did it. One, we provided training for everyone in our organization because everyone uses it. We had a class with everyone in there, and our executive assistant, I won't tell you her age, but she was the star of the class. Because what we wanted to remind people of is that if you're not using OpenAI or ChatGPT, you're in AI already. Whether you look at Netflix, where you shop online, whether you buy on Amazon, you are already in there. So the limited knowledge piece, quite honestly, Robert, was really what we wanted to impress upon our employees here. So giving them knowledge about AI, building trust around the tool, because there's a lot of misnomers about it, making sure that we put our data in. So we did, Javier, we purchased a ChatGPT for every one of our departments inside of the Beacon Council. So the data that we put in, we have one voice that we put in, and the output has just been amazing from everybody in the organization, new users. So this continuous learning mindset. And then because we are a public-private organization, we actually open up our training to all of our investors, we call our members. So all of them got to participate in the training to give them some open knowledge about it as well. And then last but not least, we continue to push for this idea of our private companies partnering with our education institutions and making sure they learn open AI and ChatGPT, because it is already now a tool that everybody can use and leverage, not only for our people in the community, but for our companies as well. So we're all in here at the Beacon Council. And I can tell you, for me, going through the training again, I have a certification, but I went through it again to get some. I learned something new every day with ChatGPT, and I even named mine. So we're friends.
Thank you. That's great. Dr. Medino, your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
by the way.
great thoughts, both of you, Dr. Hopkins and Javier. Yeah, and I agree with everything, and I'll just sort of piggyback on that, right? Echoing the sentiment, being proactive is the way to do it. Embracing it, right? Really embracing it, because will be a sense of left behind. Like, who doesn't use the internet? What business doesn't have a website, for example, right? The same thing will be with all of these AI systems. So it's reminds me, and a lot of people have talked about this example, but the calculator in math classrooms, and there was a big controversy that will take away from like the cognitive resources to be able to learn logic and do math and things like that. But now, every statistics class and math class, students use a calculator. You just have to learn and vet the output. Of course, that's what's lazy. I think is not using the systems, but not vetting the output and being proactive and thinking critically about how you're using it. So that needs to be embraced, and that also needs that mindset, as you're talking about, Dr. Hopkins, the growth mindset of how we're integrating and collaborating with AI, especially as educators. And now I'm speaking from like Miami-Dade College's perspective. Our president, President Pumariega, really embraces AI and ChatGPT. And it is hard to get buy-in, to use your term, Robert, from some professors, because AI will definitely disrupt how we educate. AI tutors, AI assistants, but a lot of professors are seeing that it can really have benefits, right? You can use it to create assessments, create syllabi, and then spend more time on what matters. That is your interaction with the students, and that's really important. So in this sense, it's definitely a great tool to optimize the way we educate and the way professors educate. And now I'll show you this. I think our president bought everybody this book at college, Teaching with AI, which is great recommendation, a practical guide to a new era of human learning. So, which we can get to also this idea of emotional quotient and how that impacts learning as well and interacting with AI. But those are, this AI adoption and getting buy-in from professors. I think it's just showing the positives of it, what it can do for you as a professor. And we all, like, in terms of this technological unemployment, right? This displacement and replacement of jobs that are coming in different phases that we're all experiencing. I mean, there's some very scary statistics, especially in education, because AI can replace educators and in really interesting ways, because it can hyper, just like in Netflix, right? It tailors your preferences and knows what you like. So now I know how you learn, and I'm reading your biology, and I can really optimize the way you learn this information, and that will have significant impacts on your grades, right? So there's a very real concern for educators like myself and how we adopt AI, but there's no doubt that it's coming, it's already here, and it will just accelerate, as I was mentioning before. So learning how to embrace it, and professors have to sort of, I'll add one more point, change their mindset, I think, and the way we create rubrics, grading rubrics, and things like that. So for students using artificial intelligence, so it's how to manage that is tricky, and people are, and this is a hand wavy answer because there is no consensus nationally on how to do this as well. So, but it's something that we really need to focus on and think about.
Terrific. Thank you. So
How
last
about how
question.
about
I'm
how
sorry.
about
Yeah.
grading papers,
Great.
Michael?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I had one professor, like if they use ChatGPT, so you're gonna have to change the structure of the nature of teaching, the nature of assignments, the nature of the, but if a student uses ChatGPT for an assignment, you can then put that answer back into ChatGPT to generate questions that then go back to the student. And if you can't answer these questions generated by your own answer, okay, but it also, you know, it also, will change the dynamic between professor and student. And that's also something I think that's really important, right? AI is going to disrupt the relationship, I think, that students have with their professors and educators and how we're educated in general. And by the way, I'm really only talking about, I just want to, like, a really high level point here. I'm really only talking about accredited institutions, right? Education is itself already changing, right? YouTube and everybody knows Coursera's and the massive online open classes and stuff like that, right? But I'm really talking about like this institutional sort of systemic education. This sort of goes away when you think about other ways of getting educated out there right now. And do you need a degree? And there's all there's questions that you can use AI to. There's already companies out there, for example, that just you have their own personalized learning management systems that you can log into, educate yourself, and it uses AI to personalize that. And so it's very interesting, to say the least.
Terrific. Thank you. So one last question, and then we'll try to get to some of the questions, the responses to some of the questions we've received. So thank you all, and please keep those questions coming. One last question. I'm probably going to start with you, Dr. Menino, and then I'm going to go to Javi next and Dr. Hopkins. So we've really hyper focused on AI, but we know that there's people skills, there's the emotional quotient, there's EQ, there's empathy, which are going to become really critical to managing our future workforces, whether you're in a leadership role, independent contributor role. So the question is, what learning and development investments will you or should we consider when we're skilling workers, particularly as AI adoption accelerates? So we've got this convergence of sorts with AI adoption and yet the softer skills that are most critical in reskilling. So I want to start with you first, Dr. Manino. What are your thoughts on that? Talk about that. How do employers really start focusing as well on those softer skills?
That's a big question. So, um, well, there's that phrase that I'm reminded of, that I actually mentioned in my last panel, right? For in terms of emotional quotient and emotional
Absolutely.
intelligence. Yeah, IQ gets you hired and EQ gets you promoted. And So I think that's super important. So overall, I would say, well, um, the, artificial intelligence and emotional intelligence are no longer separate domains, number one. Um, so there's two, again, there's a bi-directional way to answer your question, really, actually. So there's emotional AI, right? The emotional AI is being developed now, and emotional AI is just using artificial intelligence, even in education, to recognize human emotions, understand human emotions, interpret them. That's what our emotional intelligence is, right? And that's super, super important. So it's really getting our human AI interaction as natural as possible. That's one of the biggest things that one of the biggest goals, I should say, of emotional AI. So that's one way to answer your question, one part of your question. The other direction is sort of what you're asking is what sort of skills are needed as we move into this ubiquitous AI era. And to your point, right, a lot of soft skills are needed as well. More critical thinking, emotional intelligence, adaptability, resilience, creativity, anti-fragility, which I mentioned before. And those absolutely are 100% necessary, and we need to double down on those ways to think about moving into, like, we're going to have to learn, adaptability is huge, right? And Javier, to your point, it's not AI that's going to take your job. It's someone using AI, and that's because that person has other mechanisms, right, in their psychology and in their mindset. Dr. Hopkins, to your point about growth mindset, to be able to quickly adapt to what's going on, and that's the same with technology throughout history, right? That's the same with technology throughout history. You need these other sorts of skills, these softer skills. Empathy is another huge one. And so I think those become more important as AI becomes more ubiquitous, and much more important as well. Not only to be able to get those jobs and interact with other people, but also to collaborate and interact with AI itself. That's circling back to this point about emotional AI. So I think that's a high level
That
answer
works.
to your question.
Absolutely.
Hopefully
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
that
That
makes
works.
sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does. I think it does. Javi, your thoughts just from
Yeah,
a pure HR perspective.
yeah,
You know,
I love,
we hyper focus on softer skills. I
yeah,
mean, you know how really important that's becoming more and more for us in our profession.
yeah, and
So
I
share
love
with us.
this topic. I think I like AI has been with us for a long time, and one of the terms that I like to bring up is my own term. What we have now, the revolution we're seeing is generative AI, GAI, and the G for me stands for gutless. And what happens is human beings have a gut, and that's what gives us, to a certain extent, the ability to feel emotions and say, you know what, my gut is telling me that's the wrong answer, or there's a better answer. So now, with that in mind, if I fast forward 30 years, I think it's important now, but I think it's even going to be more important later, because as AI becomes part of our day to day, I think it's going to be really easy to lose that gut. It's going to be really easy to lose that emotional intelligence, because it's very algorithmic. Here's an answer, and the AI is going to give you the answer. I think as the emotional AIs come, as the emotion is built in, the human beings have to be able to provide the feedback to train that AI in the right way, which I think it's a challenge, because it's really impossible to put a gut in that AI mechanism. It's going to be really hard. So we are going to become the gut. We're
Okay.
going to be the gut for the AI, and we're going to tell the AI, you know what, that sounds bad. Or I don't know, there's 3 right answers, but my gut is telling me that the third one is the best one. So I think it's a real challenge. I think as the field continues to evolve, as a society, we have to ensure we don't get to a point where we've lost that piece.
Yes.
And we're no longer, if we don't use it, we're going to become bad at it. And it's really, in my mind, it's really easy for me to imagine a future where there's a lot less emotional intelligence involved in the processes we do, which will deteriorate our society. My thoughts.
Dr. Hop. So before I know Dr. Menino, you want to jump in so very quickly? I just want to get Dr. Hopkins' thoughts on this, please. And then we'll go back to you, Dr. Menino, because I know you want to say something.
For me, and while it's a personal view, we're having some adoption of it here at the Miami-Dade Beacon Council. I think it's a blended approach, quite honestly. Like, I do not want to walk away from the reskilling from technical skills, but I also think there's a value of balancing leadership development, communication, this idea of problem-solving skills, not just putting it inside of my chat GPT, but also thinking through what the answer might be, because the human touch will not go away. And having lived in Miami and around our diverse workforce, we need that human touch. We need that human feedback. So it's a balanced and blended approach for me.
Thank you. Dr. Menino, you want to jump in and say something?
Yeah, I mean, I was just on a panel a couple weeks ago on AI and creativity. And that was a very interesting panel. I moderated this panel, and there's a real sense that AI is becoming creative. And I definitely think there's a distinction right now between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, actually. And I'm speaking now as a neuroscientist and an AI expert. And I don't want to flesh those out right now, but from a high level, I will say that AI is getting better and better and better. And Javier, to your point about it's still garbage in, garbage out right now. It's still based on the data that you're trained on, the models are trained on, and how, there's different techniques like retrieval augmented generation to make it better and mitigate hallucinations and so on. But AI is really getting better at things that humans are good at. And there's a paradox. It's even named after somebody in the field of AI ethics called Moravec's paradox. AI is good at things that humans really are not good at, and then humans are really good at things that AI is not good at. But AI is catching up. It's catching up in creativity. It's catching up in empathy. It's catching up in intuition, possibly, and it's catching up in emotional intelligence. And so that makes it's all the more important for us as humans, and in this era of human AI collaboration, particularly in education and reskilling and upskilling, to be able to leverage our superpowers as humans. And back to both of your points, Javier's point and Dr. Hopkins' point about the necessity of that. So, I'm concerned. I'm an optimist, but I'm also very concerned about the near future, because AI is catching up. All of the stuff we've been talking about, by the way, and in the field of AI, you can make a distinction between what's called narrow AI and general AI. Not generative AI, but general AI. So narrow AI is just AI doing a specific task, like driving a car or playing chess or predicting breast cancer or like radiological reporting, right? Or giving your preferences in Netflix. And then there's general AI, or artificial general intelligence, and that's really AI that can do anything a human can do, including empathy, creativity, ethical considerations, and so on. And we're rapidly approaching that time where we're creating artificial general intelligence, and that will be very interesting and disruptive to a lot of things in negative ways, but also in very positive ways as well.
Terrific. Thank you. So thank you all. So we're going to get to the questions, but I have one ask of each of the panelists today, and I want to thank them again for their insights. And we have plenty of questions, but one final question for the panelists. Describe in one word the competency that both businesses and employees would need to adopt in order to have the most profound impact on their futures. I'll start with you, Dr. Menino, Javi, and then Dr. Hopkins. What is the one word?
Okay, so I'm going to cheat a little bit.
Oh, come on.
As I did
we
before,
rehearsed this. It's one
my
word.
previous panel, I'm cheating. I'm a cheater. So my word is meta skills.
Okay.
Meta skills.
Okay.
Like
right.
these are, there's learning, but then there's learning how to learn, right? It's a meta skill. That's the idea of meta skills. So like, meta skills include things I mentioned before, like resilience and adaptability, and so on. So I think those are super, super important for the workforce and for all of us just in general as human beings. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Javi?
For me, learning.
Learning. Okay. Thank you, Dr.
Yep.
Hopkins.
Yep. And for me, it's resilience. I go back to that every time because a lot of changes, a lot of things we need to adapt. But I think one of the ways that we're going to redefine and define how we end up in not only Miami, but the world is being resilient and coming out even stronger.
Terrific. Well, again, panelists, thank you so much. We've got a few minutes left in this session, so I do want to get to some of the questions. And again, to the extent that we can't get to all of the questions today, we will make sure that through the chamber we get you the responses you need. So I'm going to first go to the first one from Rose Grand Pierre regarding the trust in AI. Is it because of lack of policy thus far that governs it appropriately? And then she thanks us for the webinar. So is it
So
governance?
First,
for me,
Yep.
From a trust perspective, it's just consistency in results. And the example I go back over and over again is do an employee survey, load the responses of the employee survey into AI, and ask it for a sentiment score. Wait 30 minutes, load it again, ask for a sentiment score again. It's going to be a different score.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I was thinking, Rose, for me, it's around the governance piece. And then, of course, just limited knowledge of it. I trust things more when I know more about it. So learning about it helps build trust for me.
Terrific.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I think learning more about it. Yeah, Dr. Hobbins, I agree completely. Knowledge is power, right? That's the whole point of AI literacy. And AI as a mindset, right? And it's so important. You can't. It's so important understanding AI and collaborating with it and recognizing it and knowing how you're using it. People unlock their phones with their face. I'm using AI right now because I just unlocked my phone with my face, and so, right. And what are the considerations right there? But I was trying to look up a study. There is some empirical data-driven research out there on psychology of AI and how people are changing their trust in AI and what that means. So scientists are actually doing research on that, but it's a very interesting.
Okay, terrific. Thank you all. Ken, good. Ken, great to see you're on the call. Thank you so much. As you're teaching people about leveraging AI effectively, oh wait, we just lost this. Okay, yes. How can organizations or institutions keep human beings at the center of their initiatives, strategies, et cetera, alongside efficiency and productivity? That's an interesting question. Thoughts, panelists?
Yeah. I think as we continue to push forward on our large language models, in everything you do, not just technology, keeping a human-centered approach makes it a lot more easier, and you get concrete, sustainable outcomes, quite honestly. So we all have high expectations on AI. I do a lot of times, and I prompt engineer my questions in my chat GPT, and it gives me something way off than what I'm thinking. I'm like, what are you thinking? And then I think to myself that you didn't even have an idea before you put it in there. So keeping human-centered and managing your high expectations around AI is a big one for leaders in the organization.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Ken. Thanks for your question. Great question, as always. Yeah, just keeping a human center, a human in the loop at all times. And you reminded me of the AI blueprint for a Bill of Rights from the White House. One of their, and I teach this in my class actually, one of the 5 pillars in the blueprint is human alternatives, consideration, and fallback. So that's one of the 5 pillars in the AI blueprint Bill of Rights from the White House actually. A human or other alternative may be required by law. Always keeping a human in the loop, always being able to opt out. So it's that is a core principle.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think I don't know that anyone is teaching employees how to leverage AI effectively. I think it's so new, and like I said, I think we need to drive consistency first. But one way that I can think of ensuring is just having some mentors to make sure that, let's say you ask me to come up with a plan or come up with something where I leverage AI, I should have a mentor that I can go back to and have a bouncing board and say, hey, does this sound right to you? I should have someone that has a good gut check the work for me, to give me an impression, because it's really easy. And again, the answer might be right, but is that the appropriate right answer for the circumstance at hand? So I think it's going to be a challenging way to do it. I think mentorship is going to be is a potential solution to that.
Terrific. Thank you. And thank you for your question, Ken. Vero had a question. What is the most effective way to teach the future generations to leverage AI without forgetting that their sustainable competitive advantage will be their human/soft skills more than ever? Dr. Hopkins has got the big smile, so tell me.
Just first, I want to acknowledge my partner, Career Source, Diana. I was looking at you being patiently, and I know you have some amazing answers you could. So thank you, Diana, for all you do in the community. And then I'll go back to a blended approach, right? Don't walk away from learning and reskilling, but learning leadership development, problem solving, just how to communicate, how to build networks. I'll say kids, our students and our leaders that are leading people actually need to have that in. A blended approach is what I always go to.
Terrific. Thank you. Couple of the comments and then we're at time. So just a couple of comments from the rest of the panel and then we'll conclude.
From the panel?
Yeah, any comments on that or we're good? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll just add this idea of metacognition that made me think about that. What is metacognition? It's thinking about how you think. And in order to be the most effective way to teach future generations to leverage AI is to think about how you're thinking and think about how you're using these tools and take a step back. That's this idea of metacognition. It's critical thinking, right? It's the art of evaluating your own thinking skills and bringing that to bear. Like, it's the same thing you do with the internet, right? You're asking Google a question and going out and it's bringing back, and you vet the output. Should I go to this website? Should I go to that website? Should I take, right? How do you parse out that and recognize misinformation and disinformation, of which AI is also creating a problem? But that's the idea.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We're at time.
Everything they said to a third power.
So first and foremost, I want to thank the panelists, Dr. Hopkins, Dr. Menino, Javi, for your insights today. There were a lot of other questions that we left unanswered. You have my commitment, the panel's commitment, that we will respond to them. Thank you so much for your time. We're definitely interested in any other topics that we as a committee can provide to you all, and we look forward to that input. More to follow. Thank you so much for your time today, and you all have a great afternoon. Thank you. And Aaron, let me just turn it over to Aaron. Yes.
Yeah. So I want to echo what Robert said. I want to thank Robert, Javier, Paula, and Michael for this insightful conversation. I want to leave you with one thought that this conversation generated, which is that there are challenges that we're going to face, but as we face those challenges, certain opportunities are expanded and other things, shrink. And trying to figure out where that is one of the important things that we hope that this conversation has left you with great thinking points. I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to remind people that the committee itself is meeting on November 14th. If you would like to participate, please join us. We will be discussing our next webinar topic. Please be on the lookout, which will happen in December. And meanwhile, I want to thank the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce for giving us the platform, Robert and I, to bring you these types of events, and look forward to seeing you at another one of our programs. Have a great day. Thank you again for participating.